Well, I guess I'm talking tonight, so I'm starting the conversation. Welcome, everybody. I'm Zach Sarkis, founder of NYHempLab, here alongside Mary Kruger of Roc NORML and Kate Washington of Rochester. We've been actually working on this event series for the past 6 months, really trying to figure out a way of how to engage the community in the conversation about cannabis. Cannabis is here today. It's coming more legitimately tomorrow. There's multiple facets to both the industry, the sociology, the economics behind it. So we're looking to create a space of conversation to understand what individuals, what communities want to learn, and beginning to tailor these conversations accordingly. So I really appreciate everyone who's here today. I know that, yeah, this is the first of many. And I'll pass off Mike to my left.
Thanks, Zach. So everybody who's here, obviously you had some understanding, or at least a vague understanding of what it is. Let me tell you what my true interest is in this particular legislation and also this gathering that we have here tonight. One of the things that I've noticed over the last, I'd say 8 or 9 months, as we've been having much conversation about the cannabis and, of course, the legalization of marijuana legislation that has been before the state legislation, is that the companies that are currently already engaged in cannabis as an industry are people who are, in many ways, wealthy, in many ways already engaged in one level or another, whether it's medical marijuana or have been engaged in Canada and other places. And for the most part, the industry is an industry that is going to be a very, very progressive and aggressively growing industry. The people who have not been engaged in any of the conversations or in any of the investments around this have been primarily communities of color, communities where people have been, what I would have to say, disproportionately disadvantaged and affected by the previous laws around marijuana. And in fact, one of the things that is a great concern of mine is that in the current legislation, there is a real desire and there's actually a push to make sure that any of the funds that come from the taxation of the new marijuana legislation, once it's legalized, will be going definitely to a community reinvestment fund that will hopefully affect those communities that have already been disproportionately disadvantaged. However, those communities have not had a voice, they have not been captured in the legislation, they have not been really exposed as to what really would be of greatest value in the communities, and that's why we're here tonight. Because we value the voices of people who are currently in the community who will be able to actually inform not only those who are in the legislature, but inform people who are crafting any of the laws and the financial regulatory issues that are emerging around this. And we need to hear that voice. So that's why we're here tonight. Because we want to hear from you and learn from you and be able to apply those voices to what will eventually become legislation that will actually have an advantageous impact on communities that are already more disadvantaged.
Just echoing what both of them said, it was really not normal because of all of this is that we are the ones on the front line and we're all in the fighting for the past, and we, just like Keith said, the voices have been small so far. It's been a small community of people that have an input on this and really talking about what needs to be included in this legislation, so we want this to be communities of cannabis. We want it to be a community conversation. So I'm excited that we're having the space to have this conversation.
We're also coming from the perspective of how do we, HempLab is about education, it's about also involving and engaging communities from the perspective of business development. And so this kind of trifecta here is, there's a social justice component and advocacy, there is education and education on both parties, and then there is actual community engagement, building, investing, and long-term growth. And so looking at this from a long-term lens of like, yeah, we believe in an industry that can happen in our backyard. It's just not multinationals coming in and swamping, putting a spot right there in the corner and no one else can engage. So it's, we are looking at this as a big picture, like how can we put our resources and our mindsets together to engage more people so it creates more opportunity. recreational. It's kind of like apples. You know, you grow it for different varieties for different purposes. You know, there's some that are grown for their cannabinoid content. There's the CBD. Everyone knows that buzzword right now. That's coming primarily from the hemp plant. CBD can also be on a recreational or medical marijuana plant. There's hemp that's being grown for fiber to eventually maybe go into clothes or building materials. There's hemp that's being grown for grain that is a superfood. It's 30% protein, 30% omega-3 fatty acids, omega-6. Then there's some that are cultivating this plant for its chemical compounds. And that's where it becomes a fine line of, okay, there's the CBD, there's CBD and THC, and then there's just THC dominant plants. So that's where we begin looking at the more medical, recreational, that's more highly regulated. Today, if you wanted to, you could be participating in the cannabis industry through the lens of hemp. We are currently legally operating under the 2014 Farm Bill, where folks can register as growers and or processors for both the CBD varieties of hemp, which is a little bit more regulated because we're talking about a chemical compound that people are ingesting or consuming in one way, shape, or form. And again, it's more of the blurred lines of regulation, whereas the fiber and grain are more open to all. So there's a few thousand acres registered for cultivation in New York State right now. That's again from grain, from fiber, and essentially it's a $500 fee to cultivate. It's a $500 to apply to cultivate. Same for your processing application. Currently, there's no more processing applications for CBD, and the way that the law says that if you're growing your hemp for CBD, you have to sell it to a processor to process CBD in New York State, or you can sell it to an out-of-state customer. There's still, quite frankly, the organizations that are overseeing the market are overburdened. They're spread thin. There's been such a boom in demand for this industry, and to be able to participate in it, the ag markets they're in over their head, but they're doing a great job. But it's kind of there's a big push to open up for more processors, for more retail, for smokable flower, for the list goes on of what the hemp industry and these CBD products can look like. But it's kind of slow and steady, just as we see the overall legalization of recreational and medical. The 2014 Farm Bill stated that anyone can do research in conjunction with a university, and that the states can conduct research with the university partner. And so basically anyone who's cultivating this year or processing is doing so in relationship to Cornell, who's doing it in relationship to ag markets. And that's on the basis that we'll be under, 2018, the federal Farm Bill passed hemp legalization on the federal level. And so we're in this window period where we're waiting for the new law that kicks in, that is essentially the USDA will be governing all things hemp. So New York USDA will work with the national level that will drop down the specific requirements for what cultivation looks like, what processing looks like, what quality control looks like. And so essentially we'll be operating under this research pilot program until USDA federal approves USDA New York, and there's a 1-year window of turnover. So they're saying that we'll have our application for New York's program at the end of the year, and then we expect another year. So we can dive deeper into what those specifics look like, but the reality is that hemp is here today. A lot of what we're learning around cultivation, around harvesting, around processing, around manufacturing, even bottling and packaging, these are all things that will play into the overall cannabis industry. That includes, again, medical and recreational. So it's not like this is some far out thing. There are opportunities here today, and that's something that's really important. That kind of feeds into what else is here today. There's existing medical market that Mary will speak to more, as well as decriminalization, as well as this year we've been working hard to pass more of a reformed bill that is for adult use legalization, as well as a lot more facets. So I'll pass the microphone to Mary, and she can begin to speak to those things.
Just taking a step back before I get there, Zach talked about hemp and where we are with the federal government and the state government and hemp and how we see that. And going back to the beginning of the conversation, cannabis, marijuana, hemp, they're really all the same plant, right? The government has said they're different. It's this 0.3% THC that puts a difference between marijuana and cannabis. It's arbitrary, really, so we're doing that. So I think it's important to take a step back and look at why are we here, right? Why is this plant illegal? Why is it a Schedule 1 when it doesn't meet the definition for a Schedule 1 drug? It's always been political. It's never been based in science or facts. And so I think whenever we're having this conversation, we need to remember that it's always been political and it's rooted in the very start of prohibition was rooted in racism. So the reason why we started to demonize marijuana, why the name marijuana even started to come to be instead of cannabis, is related to the Mexican Revolution in the early 1900s. And so we saw an influx of Mexican immigrants into America, and the government at the time wanted to associate this influx of immigrants and with marijuana, and make an association that marijuana was legal. And so they successfully did that. The Marijuana Tax Act was then passed in 1937, which was the real first piece of legislation that made marijuana prohibition law. So here we are, like 80 years later, and the federal level, we haven't made much progress, but at the state level, we're making tons of progress. So bringing that up because we, like Zach said, we're in a state in New York right now where we're quote-unquote decriminalized. We like to call it pseudo-decriminalization. We actually have been decriminalized in New York State since 1977. We were one of the first states to decriminalize low-level amounts of marijuana. But there was a loophole in that law that said if you have any amount in public setting, it was a misdemeanor. So if you have a joint, it's a misdemeanor. If you're consuming in public, it's a misdemeanor. So those two loopholes got closed with this new decriminalization bill that everyone heard about this year. So the problem with calling it decriminalization is that cannabis is this ecosystem, right? It's not just having the cannabis or consuming it. How did the cannabis get in your hand? How did the cannabis grow? There's still so much of that ecosystem that's left criminal, and we know that disproportionately the people that have been impacted from marijuana prohibition are people of color, mostly people of color from low-income communities. And so having this conversation is really important to recognize all of that and not just moving forward with how are we going to embrace this new market that we have coming in, but at the same time, like Kate and Deb were saying, setting up a community reinvestment grant fund, setting up programs that have incubators for folks to get involved in this industry. The decriminalization bill, I talked a little bit about that just now with like closing the loopholes. There's one other really, I'll give credit to the state for this piece. They created a way to automatically expunge people's records that have been prosecuted for low-level marijuana possession for these two loopholes that were closed. So everyone is probably familiar with stop and frisk in New York City. That was because of this loophole. So all those folks who have records because of stop and frisk, we're talking hundreds of thousands of people across the state are going to have their records automatically expunged. So the state did good in that, but this decriminalization bill was really something that a condolence prize is what we call it. They knew that we should have legalized this year, but couldn't agree on the right way to do it, and so the bill in the past gave us this pseudo decriminalization. So that's kind of where we are right now in terms of is it legal in New York? I didn't answer specific questions about decriminalization and what you can do and what you can't do. Medical. Yeah, Kate, do you want to talk about medical?
Well, I can talk a little bit about medical marijuana, mainly because back in 2015, I believe it was when New York State actually was able to bring medical marijuana to our state. And I was part of that process in that I helped to really launch the medical marijuana in the city of Rochester, being the first company that was able to launch here. So medical marijuana is obviously an industry that is not only large, it's growing. Many people are invested in that industry. However, one of the things we know about it is that we call it medical marijuana, but realistically, remember marijuana, however you want to call it, was a plant that was used for healing for centuries. So this has been around for centuries, and just to sort of piggyback a little bit on what Mary was saying earlier, when you think about the number of immigrants who came to this country from Mexico, people who came from other countries where marijuana was really a healing plant that was used, they were targeted specifically for using the plant in many ways for healing. And realistically being able to really adapt the marijuana as a medical product is really an industrial and a business decision. I mean, the costs of medical marijuana are extremely high, and actually, I would have to say the medical profession is probably one of the professions that has probably the most pushback in terms of the use of marijuana for non-medical purposes, because obviously it's going to have a significant impact on their industry. People have access to it as a street. Let's just talk a little bit about how people purchase marijuana too. Even the medical marijuana industry, which is a large, growing industry, people purchase marijuana in certain categories. Generally speaking, people who are middle class, white people who have access to funding to be able to get access to medical marijuana, that's why they purchase marijuana. People who are lower income and buy marijuana on the street buy it because it's like the same, it's like buying what's on your grocery list. So it's really a huge industry. The recreational industry is going to far exceed the medical industry, and that I think is one of the areas where we have so much pushback, because people who are currently purchasers right now, it's I think it's a $2 trillion industry right now. So that's one of the things that we have to really investigate and make sure we understand. When we talk about medical marijuana versus recreational marijuana, it's still the same product, except that it's going to be more locally available. People purchase it in larger volumes and better volumes already right now.
Yeah. On top of that, it's actually really expensive. If you were to go to a dispensary now, it's expensive to get your medical marijuana card. Then if you go to the dispensary, it's expensive to buy the products, which are usually highly refined and diluted. There's different cases. It is evolving. There's discussion about opening flower, a lot of hesitation. It's interesting. There's a lot of movement and push for the concentrate, which is it's a whole market in itself, but it's you can see the impact of control and industrialization in regards to the industry of the medical perspective, the medical side. We do see a lot of opening up, like you can get prescribed or recommended. It's prescription, technically the only prescription you can get for cannabis is some of these drugs that are coming out for epilepsy, that it's a specific, because prescription means it's in conjunction with research that proves its applicability, that it's the efficacy of this product. Recommendation means we can recommend because we're not sure what's going to help. Or what else could help, and this could help, judging on what we see, but maybe not specifically shown in studies. But we're seeing more people being able to get access. There used to be pretty intense illnesses were the only things that could get prescribed, and now we're seeing for chronic pain or opioid reduction therapy, those are big evolutions that I think are really important to recognize, and we'll continue to see more and more leniency or openness, I think, to the medical side. But I think it is really important to know that the roots of this plant are medicinal and utilitarian, and now the cost of medicine is just so expensive, so it's something to consider as we're talking about the legal market in general. What's the cost benefit? We can legalize, but if it's too taxed or too expensive, why wouldn't we continue to use the existing supply chain? Your local grower or dealer. It's just one of those things that the infrastructure is already there, so looking at cost and price and quality of product and how that can push people in one way or push or pull people is something really important to consider.
If I may, when we're in Albany talking to lawmakers, you can about this stuff, they know nothing. Like the ones that have written the tax law that's in the bill that we're trying to get passed right now is the 67% tax. I'm not getting 67% tax. So they And that's what we're educating them about, is you can write this legislation, you can tax us, but just like Zach said, there's an existing market right now. There's already a supply chain that folks are going to if you pass a grant piece of legislation. So that is a big role that we're playing, as well as your voices to be playing, is that the lawmakers really don't know what they're doing. But when we go there and continue to educate them and tell them, hey, you're going to put a 67% tax. Look at California. They tried that, and their adult use market, or their program that they tried setting up was not good. They lowered their taxes. We don't lower taxes anymore, right? Like, that won't happen. So, yeah, I think just like recognizing, like, we're talking about all this really complicated stuff that has to do with this industry, because it is complicated, and the lawmakers sometimes are just trying to write really simple laws around it. I think that's why, like, having the community voice in it, people that care about it, that have a vested interest in seeing it pass the right way, is important that we're part of this conversation. There's talks about really the two ways that we can see legalization happen. Is we're going to see legalization happen that's going to benefit small business and fuel small business growth, or it's going to get hammered over into the cannabis industry. It's really, there's an in-between, but you have to work in that between, and being fully transparent, Governor Cuomo has a vested interest in seeing the medical marijuana license holders get into the adult use industry. Those folks heavily fund his campaigns. They have not made money in the medical marijuana market in New York up until this point. So they frankly feel as though they're owed something because of the lack of success of our medical marijuana program right now. So just from a consumer standpoint, we know that when we've taken an approach with big cannabis and they have cannabis sitting in warehouses, that's not in the best interest of the consumer. We want small craft patches like we've seen in other states. So yeah, I think like there's just so much that goes into it. Like, the licensing is really, really important. It kind of starts with that to see who's going to get yeah, so talk about the MRTA a little bit. The MRTA, the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act, is the bill that we're trying to pass through. This next year is actually going to be the 7th year that it has been a bill trying to get passed through. So when you hear these talks about, oh, we're just starting to talk about this, no, we're not. Our sponsors on the bill have been researching this issue and have been refining this bill for the last 7 years to try and really get a gold standard piece of legislation written. We have other states to look to see what they've done wrong and what they've done right. And the MRTA really tries to take what we've learned from other states. So, starting with the justice piece of it, there's some states that have legalized, California, Colorado. They didn't do anything to restrict people's rights when they legalized. They're just like, we're going to legalize, and then, oh, we have people in jail still, and there's an afterthought. So that's unacceptable. That's the first thing, is that if we're going to legalize, we need to make sure that we're doing something for the people who have criminal records because of this thing that's now going to become legal. And then beyond that, we need to make sure that it's done automatically. It's not something that should be left up to the victims to figure out and pay for. Expungements can be really complicated and really costly if it's left up to the person. So, you know, New York State is already moving in that direction by expunging these few but from this decriminalization bill, we're definitely moving towards automatic expungement, and that's what we have in the MRTA at a bigger level. And so then also looking at equity. So building in equity into this legislation that's through things like incubator programs, which Zach can talk more about in Kate, and that's not just giving people licenses into the industry, because you can have a license, but if you've been in the unregulated market, you don't necessarily have the skills that it's going to take to run a business. There are connections that you need to run a successful business. So making sure that there's state and private funds that go towards supporting those incubator programs. And then reinvestment back into the communities that have been disproportionately impacted from marijuana prohibition. So there's folks from those communities who have absolutely no interest in getting involved in the industry, and that's fine. But there's money that still needs to be put back into those communities for the damage that's been done from marijuana prohibition. So it's the three pillars of the MRTA are justice, equity, and reinvestment, and it's kind of the MRTA against the CRTA. The CRTA was the Cannabis Regulation and Taxation Act, which was the key piece of legislation the governor proposed last year during the budget. And we're expecting the same type of thing to happen again this year, where the governor's putting together his own bill that he's going to try and pass through the budget. It just came out yesterday, I think, that he's also having conversations with Connecticut to have as a multi-state approach to legalization. So I don't know what's ahead of us in Albany in January. We know what we want to get passed through.
One of the things that I think is important for us to think about is that from the governor's perspective, he views it as a competitive position for New York State, mainly because when you think about numerous states like Connecticut and Massachusetts already have legalization, and the state right now to watch is New Jersey, because when New Jersey's legislation gets passed, which I believe it will, I can guarantee you that New York will pass shortly thereafter, because now you've got states where there is legalization, and that will obviously limit the opportunities for not only taxation but industrial growth in New York State. So I think we have to think of it from that perspective as well. One of the things that I think about is I always come to this from an economic diversity perspective, and my goal is the equity piece to me is really formulated from an economic standpoint. I look at opportunities to democratize the businesses, to worker-owned businesses that can not only generate revenue and be scaled as significantly as we already see in marijuana and other commercial markets, but also to be able to spread that wealth through worker ownership. I believe that attaching the worker ownership module that allows us to really take those businesses and allow them to be scaled and owned by multiple parties will democratize the wealth building that is potential for this industry. So I really think that those are really something that we can think about as well, because the medical marijuana licenses, even to apply for the medical marijuana license, you had to have $250,000 for each license that you apply for. So that was just about everybody out of that market. Right, so I don't know what the licensing cost will be in the deregulated market, but I can guarantee you, if you're an individual that can't afford to pay those types of fees for a license, you're going to be locked out of the market as well. So I think providing opportunities for businesses where you can actually share the cost and benefit from the cost is one of the ways to democratize the industry.
Yeah, one of the last things, thinking about reinvestment, there's reinvestment in communities. There's also what the taxation provides access to. There's a lot of people who are concerned about cannabis legalization. Understandably so. There's been so much stigma and fear buried into our psyches that some folks are really scared of cannabis. They're scared of what it's going to do to the roads, the kids. There's the fact that it's already here, that people are already driving. It's not like it's going to go away, as we've discussed. One of the big things to look out for, especially in the MRTA, is the amount of funding that goes back into research to make roads safer, to make communities safer, to bring more education. That without legalization of cannabis and taxation, there's literally nothing's going to change. There's no money to make the streets safer for marijuana tests, or Xanax tests, or opioid tests. All those tests, it's not the same as a breathalyzer. It's a performance-based test, and we don't have the money to train people to do that. So it's like, we're talking about making a safer place. Where's the funding going to come from? So one of the big things we've discussed, I had the luxury of going down to Albany with Roc NORML, and this group is just doing incredible work. Really, knocking on the doors and showing facts to help break stigma, as well as create proof and opportunity for people to make valid decisions. But one of the big things is communities will be able to opt out of the industry if they so choose. So another reason why I'm engaged is this neighborhood right here could say that no, we don't want marijuana here, and that's something Rochester could say that. So without a comprehensive conversation, the industry could either passes by or in one way, shape, or form. But looking at how to, again, find this use it as a resource and seeing it as an opportunity to provide funding where we wouldn't really have access to. I think it's just a really crucial thing to look at. And communities can say no if they want to, they can opt out, but if they're concerned about safety and education, then please share with me where that money's going to come from. And if you can say no, don't stop the whole thing. That's one thing we've said again and again. If your community is concerned, so be it, respectfully so. And if we stop a bill and there's not funding to help, drive the problems or find new solutions.
Yeah, questions?
Yeah, probably. So initially we were saying we'll send the microphone out. We initially were a little hesitant, but now we're getting a feel of what's going on. So.
You mentioned the governor's got a counter piece of legislation. Can you briefly, without getting too deep into the weeds, outline what are the key differences between the MRTA and the CRTA?
The key differences are going to be the licensing structure. Number one is the MRTA is set up as a multi-tier licensing structure. So if you want to get in as a cultivator, there's a license for cultivation. If you want to get in as for production, there's a license separately for that. But then if you look at the CRTA, there's some multi-tier licensing in there, but they also have the allowance of vertical integration, which is how we have our medical marijuana businesses set up right now. Vertical integration is you hold all of the licenses from seed to sale. So those licenses cost a lot more money. It's people that have a lot more money that are able to get those licenses. So it's really, like I said before, like the licensing structure kind of sets up the whole scope of what this market's going to look like. So that was a big concern to us, is that we saw that it was trying to be handed over pretty much to the holders of the medical licenses. And when I say that, I think the medical licenses should have a place in the adult use industry, but we can't just open the floodgates and just let them, all 11 of them come in at the same time when we're trying to start up small businesses. If anyone knows how capitalism works, they're just going to drive those small businesses out. So we have to be really, really, really conscious of that. And then the second piece was the community reinvestment grant fund. So what the MRTA has is saying 50% of the tax revenue that's generated from this legal market would go to the community reinvestment grant fund. And that's money earmarked to communities that are disproportionately impacted from marijuana prohibition. Governor Cuomo wanted all the money to go to the general fund. So, no.
I also wanted to state that there are other ancillary businesses that do not require licenses. I mean, in addition to the actual licenses for businesses that are growing, dispensaries and that kind of thing, there are ancillary businesses that are associated with industry that don't require no licensing whatsoever. So we can still engage without necessarily having to be a grower or a dispensary or something that does require a license.
Just to add on that, the growing and selling is a fraction of the whole. There's so many hands that are either directly or indirectly connected to from seed to sale, which is the common term in the industry. It's just watching that supply chain. There's so many opportunities to be engaged, and that's one of these things. If we're not talking about it, there's not that awareness. Because maybe it takes a lot of work to grow. It's actually kind of backbreaking labor. Everyone thinks they want to grow, but if you haven't done it, then go try. It's a lot. So beginning to create other contexts and opportunities and accessibility is a big thing.
Canada is legal across the board. Are we looking at that process here for America? I'm not sure how Canada is set up similar to America. It sounds like, say like lottery money, the tax is supposed to go towards school or not. I don't know if I'm seeing that happen. So it's a problem here. They're trying to figure out which state, each state does it differently as far as taxes and pricing and where the money goes. Is that more because is it legal or across the board in Canada?
Right. That's a great question. And so we're not, I know the US isn't necessarily taking federally, everything we're talking about except for hemp is illegal. So there's companies making millions right now, US companies, multinationals, that technically it's federally illegal. There's actually some movement right now to be passing some legislation to allow banking for cannabis and hemp, which is a big deal. It's actually the first,
The first standalone marijuana bill to ever pass through the chamber ever. So that was really historic yesterday. It passed through the House. So it'll probably die in the Senate, but it passed through the House.
Thank you, John Boehner.
And so, I think Canada's unique, Canada actually and they kind of didn't really do it very successfully. They opened up all these licenses and allowed people to be able to sell them. So there was like thousands of licenses given out to small businesses, and then, quite frankly, they were gobbled up by either conglomerates and or dark money, and it became an issue. Like then how to begin to reintegrate. When Canada went fully legal, there was not enough cannabis to supply it, which is an interesting thing. And so it kind of points to the slow and steady is important. We want to get it right, and the demand far exceeds what will be available if it was to be legal today. So I think really looking at other states that we discussed, there's a lot of Canada can be a reference. Colorado, Oregon, Washington, the list goes on, Vermont, Massachusetts. Each state has had its own way, and that's actually making it complex for these. There are actors out there who are multi-state actors who have to navigate their product lines in every single state, which really sounds like a big headache. But if we're talking small business here, thank God, because if they can just be doing the same thing from state to state, they're so far ahead. There's literally a multi-billion-dollar industry, right over there, and we're still waiting to talk about it as if it's not okay. And so, from a translation from place to place, it is complex. We see that with hemp. States were arresting folks who are transporting hemp after this farm bill, and now the federal government's saying, you can't do that. It's illegal to block the transportation through. Maybe you have your specific about cultivation in-house, but then we begin to talk about, what are the standards of quality control? What pesticides can we use? What fungicides can we use, etc. So those are all things that we want. The standardization is important, no doubt, and best management practices are essential. And it's going to be piecemeal until the federal government makes a decision.
I wanted to ask you guys what the current atmosphere around interstate cannabis transportation, as you just touched on right there, and how that atmosphere is impacting Albany's decision making moving forward.
So interstate within, in the New York State or across states?
Oh, across it.
Yeah, I think the reality is a substantial amount of the cannabis that's consumed in New York is imported. It's just fact. We don't have to claim it to produce sufficient amount. I think that is part of even Cuomo's whole initiative of why regional. The state is very aware that people can go across the New York-Massachusetts line and pay taxes in Massachusetts for cannabis in Massachusetts. Pennsylvania's talking about legalizing. New Jersey is Vermont. The list goes on. You can go into Canada and go buy rec. And so I think that interstate or the ability to actually kind of leave, that money leaving versus it coming here is really the big push of it's a big driving force. Versus the interstate transportation, there's an agreement between I think Washington and Oregon that will allow for exchange across their borders when federally legal. So there's initiatives that are set in motion to allow for cross-state, and there's even stories that people don't. If you're flying from California with your medical license into Oregon, which is a medically illegal state, they won't stop you. So it's one of those things that it's definitely taxes the big driving force. And when people are leaving, just like a brain drain, when people are leaving because we can't create business here, if people aren't buying stuff here, that's what's really going to pressure the state.
The last time we went to Albany, I really made one of the staffers unhappy who we were talking to, because it's the reality is we're going to go to Massachusetts after this meeting and go to the dispensaries there, and they're like, you shouldn't tell anyone that. I'm like, but we're not doing anything illegal. Why shouldn't I tell anyone that? And so they really don't like it. It's a huge driver for them that Massachusetts loves that New York is not legal right now, because it's really just going over California is legal, and Oregon is legal, why can't they just go from state to state? Because that line between the states, the federal government owns, is literally the reason, like, as soon as you cross over the state line, it's the federal government, so I didn't know that.
Any other questions?
I have a question. So how do you see this happening with people who are currently sitting in jail? I mean, it's all talk and it's really great that we're working on this, but there are still people who are sitting in jail who are hoping that some of this stuff gets passed. You know, how can we involve them in this conversation? What happens to them, you know, when this stuff, I know it's kind of a gray area, but how do you guys see this happening once it does become legal?
Well, that's a good question. I left that out when I was talking about the MRTA before. I was only talking expungement. There's also resentencing in the MRTA, so I don't know how necessarily to involve those folks in this conversation, but the folks who are in jail aren't being left out of the conversation on this end. That, you know, resentencing, like if someone's in jail just simply for something that becomes legal after legalization, which I'm not a legal expert, so I don't know all of that, but like there will be resentencing involved if we get the MRTA passed. That wasn't included in the CRTA. That was another difference in the CRTA, was it just was not heavily based in social justice like the MRTA is.
And then another thing too, and was kind of a pretty great success that Roc NORML helped bring forth in Rochester and communities across the board. DA stopping prosecution, like cutting it off before it translates into that. And there's also these really awesome initiatives that I think was it last week or this week? It's National Expungement Week.
Yeah.
And I think it's the second annual where there's a massive initiative of helping people clean their records up. And that's the kind of work that's going to happen year in, year out, because it's kind of like the voting thing. It's like people literally it's like you gotta knock on doors, you gotta ask people to engage, and then like even if it's engaging with themselves and helping, like there's just not awareness. So what's the education to help spread the word to bring more people to the table? So I think that's a good question.
So the National Expungement Day is like an annual thing.
Yeah.
And what will the mascot look like?
Yeah, it's actually like on social media, it's powerful, it's clean, it's crisp, it's like, you know, you begin to see these like big sponsors that are helping these initiatives in all these major cities. I feel that that's something hopefully we can tap into and help invite that into our community, because it's that level of branding and awareness and legitimacy is what helps spread the word. So the newspapers will write about it. So families will talk about it. So it's not just hearsay or, you know, it's still kind of pushed aside.
Get your logo together. Get your logo.
Yeah.
Get it out there.
Yeah.
Are there examples of other types of crimes where a bill has passed that made expunging their records the law of the state or of the land that's analogous? Because as I listen to you talk about it, it sounds promising, but then when I think about the actual execution, passing a law is one thing, but all of those people, where's the manpower come from to actually go through record by record and individual by individual? That's a huge process that just doesn't happen with the snap of a finger. So how do they actually execute that? And it hasn't been done before to that degree.
So, was it San Francisco? There is something called Code for America that was developed that San Francisco was able to automatically expunge upwards of 6,000 records through this code that was developed. So I think we're seeing things that are literally being invented before our eyes to solve these problems.
So
it's an algorithm that's written.
They can go to the database, they can, like, so again, the automatic expungement, the non-violent below X amount can be brought up from the system, from the public records, that then can be lumped into the expungement process. And I think that's one of the biggest concerns is like, if it's not automatic, who is going to pay for the lawyers to go through the process? And is some of this funding going back there? Because we can say expungement, but if there's not a process or funding that's associated with it, then it's a pipe dream.
And even if it is automatic. Technology is not perfect, so who goes through individual by individual and make sure this actually happens? I can't imagine that happening smoothly. I just can't picture that happening. It's nice to talk about, to actually execute, that's a massive undertaking.
Especially in a state like New York where there's like millions of people under with a record, so I think it's.
So that's why we have a coalition of people across New York State. We're part of the Start Smart New York Coalition. It's NYHempLab part of it, Drug Policy Alliance. There's just tons of organizations across the state, Legal Aid Society. And so, exactly, the state's saying that this is going to happen. There's a timeline that they've given us that by August 28th of 2020, all of these records are going to be expunged. But on the Start Smart call that we were on last week, where we were talking about all of this, that exact thing came up is that, okay, we're saying we're going to automatically expunge all these records, but then what if someone goes to apply for a job and they say that they weren't never convicted or never committed a crime, and then something comes back on their record? So there's going to be a process for those people to something where they won't have to go through the process to actually get it expunged and be like, hey, my record wasn't expunged, and then it will happen, is how it was explained, like layman's terms to us.
Well, and even within that, is there a prioritization that's going to happen? Because someone that it's on your record but you're walking free, it's less crucial than someone who's sitting in jail. So will there be a prioritization so that the people who are currently being punished for it get expunged and taken care of first, they get free or whatever, and then you can worry about people walking the street later?
It'll probably be like Juneteenth.
Yeah.
A year and a half later, all of a sudden the number comes up.
Yeah, we're free or we're not free.
From a local conversation though, it's like with that energy and that question in the right context, in front of the mayor, in front of the DA, which hopefully these conversations can evolve into, that there's enough context, enough support, and enough power to have legitimate conversations to ask those questions, that we're actually able to target it on a level that's manageable versus being dependent on the state to enact it and make it simple. So I think it's the top down, bottom up. How do we raise ourselves and have the right conversations, which isn't going to be perfect either, but I really appreciate that energy, because it's like that's how we have to be talking about it and asking about it, because otherwise people will continue to slip through the cracks. So it's how holding the accountability to both the state as well as ourselves to say, what is going to be the solution, and it's not going to be just say it's good, and that's like the work. It's like, if we got years of making this happen, by 2025, if we got it, we won. We done good, but it's a long shot.
So one of the questions I had is about the regulated and the unregulated market, because I believe that, obviously, as you indicated, nothing happens automatically. So, say the legislation passes, you've got people who are taxed now for making purchases, then you've got all these people who will never really go into the unregulated market, will continue to buy on the street from people who are not in the regulated market. So what's that look like from a decriminalization standpoint? And is that legality, or that part of it that says you have to be a part of this regulated market? What happens to those people from a legal standpoint? So if you've got Joe standing on the corner selling, you've got somebody in a dispensary selling, or selling in the store and paying the taxes on it, collecting taxes on it, you're still going to have an issue with the deregulation, because people will still be illegally purchasing.
And if you get arrested for it, then it's not really decriminalized.
Exactly.
It's the same thing. Just
Right.
a bunch of rich people are now making money off
And
it.
it'll
The
take
street
maybe
level
10
is the
years or
same.
so for those things to catch up, so you still have criminalization.
Yeah, that's not decriminalization.
Out west, there was discussions of the legalization is actually the recriminalization, because it's different parameters you have to aim and operate within. And to a degree of quality control, growing up in New York State, coming up, whatever I can get my hands on, it's like, you get what you can. And I know I've consumed my fair share of poison, and I wouldn't wish that on anyone. And existing supply chain, there isn't quality control measures, so it's something to consider. How do we educate and bring people to want to move towards cleanliness or clean products? There's the whole home grow. Quite frankly, I think people should be growing it themselves. It's not inaccessible to grow enough, but that's a huge thing that like, how do we not start putting people in the jail? Like, what's the alternative? How do you begin to integrate? What are the opportunities and what's the stickiness and the magnetism versus it's bad, they're wrong, they're breaking the rule that we just set up, and it creates that, continues that imbalance. And I think that requires community buy-in, community engagement, ownership, equity, so you're not, it's like, there's these different mindsets of how a business can operate that people get more than just working for someone else, making someone else money, or, you know, gotta do it on our own. And I think it's always, the underground will always be there in one way, shape, or form, but just, what's the penalty?
Okay, because if you play it forward in your mind, it's almost like the decriminalization and legalization actually, if the legislation is not written right, it will become another form of systemic racism and classism that is really a legal transfer of wealth that continues to negatively impact the poor and people of color. It's going to be the same thing over again, but a bunch of rich people are going to get a lot of money out of it, while the poor people still suffer the exact same way.
And that goes back to the supply chain and infrastructure is here. How does that translate into a legal market if people so choose? But like creating the opportunity, the education, it comes down to like, some people are literally gonna say, I'm never gonna go legal and I just don't care. And I respect, everyone has their own, you know, we're sovereign beings on this planet. But I think it's huge because without the efforts of looking and splitting the hairs in the law, we're gonna get something we don't want. Without community engagement and conversation, then it's going to be the Marlboro on the corner, not Zach Shuck, you know, because then that's the reality. So there's many layers of why we're hosting these conversations, but it does come back to if we're not engaged, we're not part of it.
I was trying to add to what Zach was saying, and this is a different item. I had a lady come to my store and wanted to sew me a jersey, like a jersey top, like a kid. And I have a store. I said, well, I actually need 40 of them because I have like a little team, cheerleaders, and I need 40 of these different sizes. She's like, oh, I can't do that. And I'm 70 years old, and I just can't get all that. I'm 70. But she's coming to me with a hot jersey. So it's going to just keep going and going and going. And, you know, you can raise the bar. If you're going to be doing the business, you're going to be willing to say, I don't want that stuff. And then the folks outside are still selling it. But then if you keep outside your business clean, you have like events, and you kind of celebrate, you know, and you have that network that you're teamed up with, then they'll go somewhere else with that. They'll still come back, but they'll go away. And you can be nice to them and say, well, thank you, or just give them a price, or a key in the abundance that they can just come up with and they can sort of tip. So just kind of like embrace it, but at the same time, know that you're going to keep the standards up because you're running the business intuitively. And you can market, PR, and just like anything else you sell, apple pie, sweat socks, jerseys, whatever you're going to do, they go to Rite Aid still in deodorant and want to bring it to a Bath and Body shop. You know what I mean? Like Swab. Why would Bath and Body have a Swab label inside their, you know, their business? They wouldn't. But you're going to have to quit selling under the table and just, you're going to always be there. So be greater than your circumstances and do your business well, and that's it. Pay your taxes. You know what I'm saying? It's all about the taxes. They want the money. They don't really care about the ground floor of folks that are doing things on top level. They want the taxes that come through their fingers. That's what the whole thing is about. That's why it's all illegal, because folks on the street aren't paying sales tax. They pay sales tax, it'll be legal. So it's the same, it's another product, same issue.
So to your point, I think the challenge is going to be to figure out how do we not create this new criminalization of people, right? How do we not further criminalize people? Like, okay, if you're doing something that's not right, like because you're on the street selling it, but that's not a felony, right? Like that shouldn't even be a misdemeanor. It should be a violation. And so it's like trying to make it be we can't say we want to create a regulated industry and then say, but let people keep selling on the street and don't do anything to them. Like, that just doesn't work, but we don't need to put those people in jail. We don't need them to have criminal records because they're selling a plant that's legal for you to sell in the store. We don't do that if someone's selling a t-shirt on the street, right? So, yeah, a ticket, don't do it, and don't treat it like something more than it is. So, and that's the challenge, is like, how do we know that there's gonna be this unregulated space, and how do we protect those folks from being turned into criminals while still advocating for the regulated market?
Yeah, I think that, you know, we're at a point where we need this circle to be 10 times as big and happening and again and again. So we've chosen to host this event in each quadrant of the city to keep conversation going. What does this quadrant need? Who wants to host it? How can we build a community here that helps facilitate the conversation? Because that's what's going to have the ripples. That's the grassroots approach, that those roots actually are connected to the place. And so it's as just looking, does anyone actually have any more questions?
Yes, great. The states that have legalized it, they have rules or regulations in place, and that's what the MRTA is for New York State trying to establish.
Yeah, so the MRTA is our version of what other states have done. And we believe that it's something that's really picked the best of what we've seen, especially from the equity, the social justice components, the reinvestment, those key foundational things. Like, if that's not there, then you know, why? What are we doing? It's kind of the underlying point. It's like, when the bill was initially not passed, part of me is like, well, that's okay, because there's parts of that that I'm still not 100% on, because it is not rooted in this, you know, small business. If small businesses don't have a place, then I'm not interested in the industry being legal. But I am, of course, but it's this contradiction.
So if it's legalized tomorrow, we're still at the table trying to figure out how the project in New York State is going to do it.
So if that bill got passed tomorrow, then Rochester would be having a conversation, what do we want? So this is in preparation for Rochester.
You're ahead of yourself. You gotta vote November 5th.
Yeah.
You gotta vote to make sure that Rochester is part of this, because the people who are voting for this election are the ones that decide what's gonna happen in the county of Rochester. Seriously, the county legislatures, county executive, city council, and district attorney play huge roles in what this is all gonna look like. So we're throwing a smoke to vote party at 3 heads on election night. Go out and vote, tell all your friends to vote, but seriously, this election, 38% of registered voters in Monroe County voted in this similar election in 2017. So, gotta count the vote if we actually want any of this to happen. Sorry.
No, and I mean, and we need to keep hosting these conversations. So we're really grateful for everyone who's stayed with us and has contributed, because the conversation doesn't build unless it's a two-way street. It's not us presenting. Like, we want to provide context, but then we want to know what more we can do. And so that's our goal. And so really sincerely thank you all. Oh yeah, we got feedback cards. So anything you can offer us that just helps us refine it. We have another event on, was it October 15th? Where is it again?
Southeast Neighborhood Service.
Yeah, Southeast Neighborhood
Over by, Village.
Yeah, and so we're finding our locations, and we're going to keep it going. We're beginning to find our media partners to help us, again, spread the word. It's really, the distance a share goes or a shout out on the radio goes is substantial, because we're not attuned, our ears aren't attuned to this yet, and people aren't sharing it regularly. So we're trying to normalize and trying to engage, because without it, we're stuck in the past.
Yeah, and we're stuck talking to the same people who we've been talking to already, right? So you guys going out to your friends and telling them about this, and telling them these conversations are happening, and that there's another one on October 15th, and just growing who is having these conversations is really the goal behind all of this, because we're just trying to wrap up as much as we can before going back to Albany in January, and making sure we get this done right. So it's going to happen next year, right? Like, it will happen. And we gotta make sure that we're watching.
I have one question for you. We're on Genesee Street, and it's neighborhood service center. It's right there, and the street liaisons are in there often.
Yeah.
So you can actually get a copy of where the meetings are, like the different, like northeast side, South Avenue.
They have, we actually coordinate with the
awesome.
Neighborhood Service Center.
Okay. General.
Yep.
Okay.
And so and again, like, This is like a startup, you know, we're like getting it going and hiring it all out. So feedback and support goes a long way because then we can help to spread the word, so.
And if you want to volunteer, hi, I'm Carly. I'm co-chair of the membership committee with Mary. So we're actively looking for people who are willing to volunteer in any capacity, whether you want to come to Albany and want to have these conversations with the legislators or help us at events or just spread the word. If you are interested, please come and see me. You can be, yes, well, you can meet right over at the normal table and I'll be there and we can find you anything that you could possibly want to come to.
And even in the same group, this group, our super trio, I don't know what the formal name is yet, but it's, helping our group continue to build the group, because this will take a community in itself. We're 3 individuals and 3 organizations that hope to have many, many more around us to help this grow. So it's not just us at the party. So just know that we welcome your engagement and support. So
Yeah, thank you everyone for coming.
that's good too.
You can't-
Wrap.